Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to Learn Arabic from the Quran. Today we will start with lesson 5, gender. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. So Arabic has two genders, masculine and feminine. So the name Khalid is masculine. Now, the word al-qamar, al-qamaru, moon, is masculine. So how would you know that? The way it works is it is just in the Arab culture that has gone on from generation to generation, and they have identified certain words as masculine and feminine. Okay, so it's not even going to be in the dictionary. But there's a handful of words that are feminine. And as we go through the lesson today, we will be discussing some examples of that. So let's take this example in the Quran. So right here, this is what Ibrahim alayhi salam is saying. So فَلَمَّا رَأَى الْقَمَرَ. So, and when he saw the moon, بَازِغًا, rising, قَالَ, he said, Hada Rabbi. Now, Hada, we have not studied yet, but it means this. Okay, so Haza means this. Okay, so the reason I am bringing this up here is to show you that if it was female, now he is referring to the moon, right? He is referring to the moon. So when he saw the moon rising, he said, "This is my Lord." So Haza Rabbi means my Lord. So he is referring to the moon. So he said, when he saw the moon rising, he thought this was my Lord. But what I want to point out here is hazihi has not been used. If it was hazihi, then it would be feminine. Okay, so this is a clue to you that this word, al-qamar, is masculine. That's why haza has been used and not hadhihi, which would have indicated that this word is a feminine. Okay, so this is just one way we can identify in the Quran when we are looking at a masculine word. Okay, so al-qamar is masculine. Now, there is a certain way that in Arabic we can make feminines, and this is the easiest way that we can understand feminine, which is by the ta marbuta at the end. Okay, this is ta marbuta. It has the shape of the ha with the two dots on top of it. Okay, this is called ta marbuta. So mudarrisun, this is a teacher, a masculine word, mudarrisun. So how do you make it feminine? Very easy. You just add the ta at the end. You just add the ta at the end. And we note that when you add this ta, there has to be a fatha before it. See, the last letter before the ta marbuta takes a fatha. So you are not going to be immediately writing Arabic. So for you, you're just noting that for now, right? So here, mudarrisun, and then when it's female, there's a fatha before the ta marbuta, mudarrisatun. Mudarrisatun, which is a lady teacher. So we have made this masculine word feminine by adding a ta marbuta. Now you cannot do this for all the words. You cannot do that, but you can for adjectives. Okay, a lot of the adjectives and nouns are made feminine by doing this. In a lot of cases, you will be able to, but not always, as we will slowly see. Now, we already talked about ta marbuta. So this is just telling you here that it looks like a ha with two dots on top of it. And the reason is because when you stop on it, so for example, you are going to pronounce jannatun, right? If you keep going, you're going to say jannah, jannatu. Let's say jannatu. But if you stop, you're going to say jannah. right? If you stop when you're reciting the Quran, you just say Jannah. So that's where the ha sound comes from. But if you keep going, you're going to pronounce the ta. So like, for example, ayatun or ayah. So if you stop, you will say ayah. You don't pronounce the ta, you pronounce it like a ha. So this is what it is. This is called ta marbuta. It has the shape of a ha with 2 dots on top of it. Okay, so this is something we have already talked about, but there's more examples. So for example, these are some masculine words, and you can make them feminine by adding the ta marbuta at the end and a fatha before it. So look at mudarrisun, mudarrisatun, right? And we discussed you put this fatha before. Now look at this, talibun, which means student. Female student is talibatun. Okay, walidun is father, walidatun is mother, right? And then gazalun, gazalatun, right? And kabirun, kabiratun. So usually nouns which refer to male humans and animals and adjectives can be made feminine by this method. This is the general rule. Adjectives, and also if there's a male human or animals, we can make it adjective, like we have seen in this example, right? Okay, now we're going to talk about, this is a general rule. Now we're going to talk about more other ways also words can be feminine, okay? So this word doesn't have a ta marbuta at the end, ummun. It doesn't have a ta marbuta, but by its nature, this word has to be feminine. It's a mother, right? So ummun is mother. Abun is father, right? Akhun is brother, and ukhtun has to be a feminine word because it's referring to a sister. So similarly, waladun is a boy, and then bintun has to be a girl. So these are very obvious because the meaning is feminine. So they have to be feminine. So again, we've already looked at these examples. Ibnun is son, bintun is daughter, akhun is brother, and ukhtun is sister. Okay, now, again, in most cases, the ta marbuta is a marker of feminine gender. We talked about that, and we look here some more examples like safir, safiratun, ambassador. Right? Okay. Now, there are, okay, just a second here. The slide skipped. We were right here. So there are certain words which are always feminine in gender and always spelled with a ta marbuta. So these are also easy to identify because they will always be even spelled with a ta marbuta. Okay, so for example, this word here, let's start here. For example, zahratun, right? This is flower. So you will know that this is feminine because the word itself will carry a ta marbuta. You're not going to, there's no, you cannot just remove the ta and make it masculine. No, this word is always going to come in this shape. Okay, for example, sakafa, sakafatun, this is culture, right? So this is also a feminine word. You cannot remove the ta and expect it to be a masculine word. This is by itself feminine, like jazira. Again, this is a feminine word. Okay, now asifa, asifa. So this means storm. And with the ta marbuta, it means storm. Now, in the Quran, we see this verse where, yes, the ta marbuta is not used, right? Here it's asif. So here it's translated as stormy, but a better translation would be, because this does not have the ta marbuta on it, this is translated as stormy here, but a better translation would be to use this word tempestuous or strong and turbulent, because that's the meaning of this word asif without the ta marbuta. Okay, so see, yawmin asifin. So a better translation would be a tempestuous day. Okay. So again, these are easy to identify because they will always have a tamar buta at the end. And these we talked about where you're adding a tamar buta at the end. There's a masculine version of it and there's a feminine version of it, right? And then here we will look, we have not studied adjectives yet. In the future, when we see adjectives, we will learn how you can just add a tamar buta. So if you're saying at-taliba, here, notice at-talibatu. This is, it is referring to a female student. So if you want to say Muslim student, so you know this is feminine. So now you're adding this tamar buta at the end to indicate it's a Muslim student. But if it was masculine, say it would be, let's say it would be at-talibu, then it would be what? It would be, there would be no tamar buta at the end, right? It would be al-Muslim, al-Muslim. So we could write it like this. So if it was masculine, we would write it, the at-talibu al-Muslim. Okay, so that would be masculine, the Muslim student. All right, so this is an adjective. We will study adjective later, but it's describing the student. So here it's, if it's masculine, you don't put the tamar buta. If it's feminine, you add the tamar buta at the end. So that is what it's talking about here. For adjectives, you're adding the tamar buta. If it's talking about a feminine student, a female student. Now, some words are always feminine. So again, I think we already talked about it just in the last slide, but this is just giving you more examples like a safina tu. You're not going to remove the ta here and make it masculine. We already talked about that. There's just more examples. Okay, so this is rock. A sakhratu. You're not going to remove the tamar buta to make it a masculine rock. These words are always feminine. Okay, the stone, the ship, the rock, jannatu, jannatun, these are always feminine. So more examples here. All right, now some of this we've talked about. So it's saying here that you can add tamar buta at the end. We already talked about it. For example, fitnatun. This is actually always feminine word. You're not going to remove the ta. This is inherently feminine, which means this word by itself is feminine. You're not going to need to remove the tamar buta to make it masculine. Fitnatun, that's a feminine word. We already talked about these examples also. Jannatun, ayatun, these are all feminine. Okay. Now, this is another marker. This is another marker of a feminine word. So this ya at the end has no dots. This ya at the end has no dots. It is called alif maksura. So Laila. You see, this is nothing but an alif. I know you write it like a ya, but it doesn't have the dots. It doesn't have the dots. So it's pronounced like a alif. Laila, like a short alif. Like, for example, look at this word. This means good news, bushr, right? But now if I add bushra, this alif maksura at the end, bushra. You see, now it's a female name, right? Bushra, who's in this class, her name is Bushra. So this is an alif maksura. So this is a sign. This is a sign. This over here is a sign that it's a feminine word. Okay. Same with person, right? Now, what happens if you add a alif maksura at the end? It becomes husna. That's feminine. Understand? So with this is alif maksura. When there's an alif maksura at the end added, it's a sign also, a marker also of a feminine word. Okay. So hazihil hayat dunya. So this is a feminine word. How do I know that? Because this here it has a ta. And notice again, we talked about this in the beginning, right? This is, if it was masculine, it would be hadha, but it's feminine. So hadhihi, hadhihi. Okay, because this word is feminine. Okay, now let's talk about alif mamduda at the end. What is alif mamduda? Alif mamduda means it is hamza preceded by an alif. So you see there's a hamza at the end. Before the hamza, there's an alif. So this alif and this hamza is extra. Okay, this is extra. So the word over here, look, husn, right? But if you add this, it becomes feminine. Hasna'u. So that's a feminine name, Hasna'u. So this is also alif mamduda at the end, a sign of feminine words. Again, alif mamduda means hamza preceded by alif. It's a marker of feminine gender. Allahu la ilaha illa huwa lahul asma'ul husna. So because this is feminine, we just talked about that because it has alif and hamza at the end, right? This is alif mamduda. Because this is a feminine word, al-husna is the adjective describing the names. That's why it has this alif maksura at the end. Isn't that beautiful? So it matches, the adjective matches. So this is why it has the alif maksura at the end. Okay, al-asma'ul husna. So now you know that asma'u, when you say this next time, now you know al-asma'u is feminine and al-husna is feminine. Both are feminine because there is an extra markers at the end. All right. Now, again, I think this is going to be saying feminine gender without a particular ending. Okay. Before, in that previous slide, we talked about markers, right? These are markers. Either it has this ta marbuta, either it has an alif maksura, or we are looking at the alif mamduda. There are markers at the end. You can easily identify them, right? We talked about naturally feminine words also. Sometimes we add the ta marbuta to make feminine, or sometimes they're naturally feminine. Like this word is naturally feminine. This word is naturally feminine, right? But there are certain words you will not see a particular ending that will tell you that this is a female. So how do you know that, right? So you know that because the word itself means feminine. We talked about this way in the beginning, right? Like ukht has to be feminine because it means sister. Ummun has to be feminine because it means mother. So this one is very obvious. Okay, this one is very obvious. No problem here. I believe this is the tricky one here. Okay, there are some words which are feminine, but they don't have a clear marker. You know, in the beginning, I was telling you that al-qamar was the moon was masculine, right? I had to tell you that. So similarly, there are certain words that you are not going to know. You just have to know. Okay. So, you know, would I be worried about that? No, because you are not writing an essay in Arabic that you have to know that, but it's just good to recognize them in the Quran. So that way, you know the why it's hazihi, referring to a female. Is it haza? Is it referring to a masculine word, right? There's not a lot, actually, there's not a lot of words that are in the female words category. For example, nafs is feminine. Nafs is feminine. Ash-shams is feminine. Okay, so remember we said al-qamar was masculine. So just think of the counterpart. The shams is feminine. Okay, so and then nar is, take a guess. What do you think? Look at this. Remember I told you if it's haza, it's masculine. If it's hazihi, it is feminine. So what do you think is nar? What do you think? Fire. If you said feminine, you are correct. Why? Because hazihi is referring to a feminine gender, right? So nar is feminine. Okay, hazihin nar. All right. This is the fire which you used to deny. Now, again, parts of the body that are double are feminine, right? We will talk a little bit more. You will look at this a little bit more on the next screen. I'm going to talk about this again, okay, on another slide. Parts of the body that are double are feminine. We will revisit this one in a few minutes. The names of towns and countries are also feminine. So that's pretty easy to remember. Towns, countries are always feminine. So for example, Egypt, Misr is feminine. In the Quran, you will find a reference to Misr, Egypt. That is a feminine word. Okay, so this is also quite straightforward to identify. So this is a repetition of what we have already seen. So the feminine gender, like we said, this is ta marbuta, ta'ul marbuta, right? But for example, these are words that are always feminine, right? Baqaratun. Okay, now qaryatun, this is always going to be feminine. It means a village. Salamatun is safety. And we already talked about this, right? Bintun, ukhtun, these are feminine, always feminine. We already talked about alif maksura. So Salma, Laila, these are alif maksura. A lot of the female names are going to come with that, right? Salma, Laila. Okay. Kubra, Sugra, these are all feminine words. Okay, because, and how did you know that? Because there was an alif maksura at the end, right? We talked about alif mamduda, asma'u, hasana'u, amya'u. Why? Because it ends with a alif and hamza. Hamza preceded by alif. These are also markers of feminine words. All right. Okay, now we talked about names of women. So Zainabu doesn't need to have a ta marbuta at the end. It's a female name. So it has to be feminine. Same with Maryam. These we already talked about, right? Ummun, Arusun, it doesn't have a ta marbuta at the end, but you know, Arusun has to be feminine because it's referring to a bride, right? So here, parts of the body that are double, those are feminine. So for example, you have two eyes, Ainun, that's masculine. You have two hands, Yadun, that's feminine, I'm sorry. These are double are feminine. If I said masculine, that was incorrect. These are feminine, okay? Double, if you have double parts, they're feminine. So udhunun, ear, you have two ears, right? So these are all feminine. So rijlun, feminine. So we already talked about names of towns and countries, feminine, right? Okay. So again, so this to me is, what is something that is not that obvious because these are words that you kind of have to know, but again, there's not a lot of them, and it's okay if you don't recognize them. It's not a big deal. Even if you don't recognize them as feminine while you're reading the Quran, it's not a big deal at all. So like some common ones, I would maybe just know the common ones. For example, narun is fire, rihun is wind. These are feminine. Darun, feminine. House is feminine. This is a common one. Sama'un, right? A lot of the nature, you will observe a lot of the nature ones, right? Sama'un, ardun, shamsun, rihun, these are all feminine. Nafsun. Now this is, yeah, these are not very common, but harbun is war and tariqun is path or way. These are feminine. So again, if they don't fall into these special categories, they are masculine. So the general rule is masculine unless you know otherwise. And I would not worry too much about knowing all of this. So this is just showing you how the double members are feminine. Yadun, ainun, rijlun, udunun. These are double, right? So that's why they are feminine. And this one is singular, body members, singular, they are masculine. For example, ra'sun, anfun, famun, wajhun, face. Wajhun is face. Famun is mouth. Anfun is nose. Ra'sun is head. Yadun is hand. Ainun is eye. Rijlun and udunun. Okay, so let's not, this is not very complicated. All this is saying is that if you are referring to a group, suppose there is masculine in the group and feminine, if you're going to refer to this group, you use masculine. That is what this is saying here. You refer to masculine. So for example, if you're referring to al-masjidu wal madrasatu, the mosque and the school, you're referring to them both and you want to say that they're both near. Qariban, you want to say they're both near, you would use masculine reference. Even though it has one feminine and one masculine, you will use a masculine reference to a group that may have both masculine and feminine. So now we are going to look at some more examples of this. And I'm going to stop sharing this and share you some Quranic examples. All right. So here we are. Let's look at some examples now of what we have already talked about. So these are the, in case someone wants to know, you can learn this if you like to know the masculine term. Al-muzakkar means masculine and muannas means feminine. Muzakkar and muannas. Okay, that means masculine and feminine. All right, we talked about this. This will be review, but it will be nice to kind of look at some words specifically from the Quran to look at what we have learned, okay? So we talked about bintun, girl. Imra'atun, we talked about this before, is woman. Ummun, a mother. Remember we said these are words by meaning they are feminine, right? So right here, imra'atu, we already said the wife. Here it's referring to wife of Pharaoh. Even though it means woman, here in the context, it's referring to the wife, you know, wife of Pharaoh, okay? All right. Then let's look here. So here we communicated to the mother of Musa, Ummi Musa. Ummi obviously doesn't have the tamar buta, but is a feminine word. We talked about this. Ummi Musa, mother of Musa. I hope you recognize this is idafa that we talked about last time. Ummi Musa, mother of Musa. This was the idafa construction, possessive construction that we talked about last time. Mother of Musa. Okay. So now these are words we talked about that are always feminine, right? Always, because they end with tamar buta. You're not going to remove the ta to make it a masculine word, right? Jannatun, salatun, zakatun. If you remove the ta, you're not going to make this a masculine word. These are all Feminine words, ummatun, very commonly used word in the Quran, ummatun, community, nation, that's what it means. Remember, these are all feminine words, very, very easy to identify because they are already ending with ta marbuta, they're naturally feminine. Kulli ummatin, every community, kulli ummatin. Right? We will raise a witness from every community. Okay, and here again, al jannatu, right? Uzlifat. So this is Jannah feminine. Okay, now this is we talked about earlier where you can add ta marbuta. We can add the ta marbuta to make it feminine. Okay, like this was different. This is different from the category that we looked at above. These are always feminine. You're not going to remove this ta marbuta. Here, this is different. This is masculine. There's a masculine version and there's a feminine version. Muslim, muslimun, muslimatun. Ibnun, ibnatun, girl. Ibnun, ibnatun. Kabirun, kabiratun. Laylun, laylatun. Laylun, laylatun. Yes, okay. So where were we? Right here. Yeah, we were right here. Okay. So now we're looking at exactly we're looking at Laylatil Qadri, right? So this is feminine. Okay. Again, feminine. La kabiratun, kabiratun, feminine. Here it's referring to difficulty, kabiratun. Kabir means big. Here the meaning is, difficult. All right. So, okay, now there's going to be these exceptions, but please do not be alarmed by them because there are very, very few exceptions like that. And it is not something to worry about. It's just something, you can know or note so you don't think there's any mistake. So khalifatun, you would think is feminine, right? Because it ends with a ta marbuta. But these are certain exceptions. Khalifa is a masculine word. But again, there's just few like that. I would not worry about that, okay? And then again, this is an words ending. We talked about that. What is this? Alif mamduda. See, alif and then hamza. Alif mamduda is also a marker of feminine. See, a lot of the colors are gonna have like that ending. Right here. This is a typo here. This should be khadra'u with a ha. It's not ha, it's ha, okay? It's green. Sauda'un, bayda'u. Sauda'u. Sauda'u. Bayda'u is white. Hamra'u is red. Safra'u is yellow. And sama'un, we talked about earlier, is sky. These are all feminine, right? As-sama'u is feminine. Okay, this is color, right? Safra'u, yellow colored cow. All right, now again, let's not be confused over here with some exceptions. Let's not be confused, okay? I would advise you to generally remember what I taught you, which is this is always feminine. There's just a few exceptions that I would not worry about too much, but it's good to make a note. For example, these three words are showing you here. Even though they end with the alif mamduda, they are masculine. So, fukara'u, shuhada'u, ulama'u, these are in the Quran, but they are masculine, all right? But I don't think it's gonna make a difference at all for your understanding because of the meaning. You just have to know the meanings of the words. It's not gonna be a big deal, but these are masculine words. I would focus more on the vocabulary here just to know because these are quite common words in the Quran. So you should be making a list of the vocabulary for the common words like this, because they come quite a bit in the Quran. Okay, like masakin, fuqara'i, so poor and needy, right? Okay, we talked about alif maksura earlier, like kubra, bushra. These end with alif maksura, and it's also feminine. We talked about this also before, the conventional names of villages, countries, etc. These are like a room. These are all feminine, right? Okay, we talked about these two parts of the body. We've already addressed this before. Now this is interesting. Words given to fire are generally feminine. So this is a way you can maybe try to remember. Fire, words similar to that are all feminine. For example, again, good vocabulary words. Jahannamun, narun, sa'irun, jahimun, sakarun. These are feminine. Again, these are nice to know that the words, certain of these words related to wind are feminine as used in the Quran. Right? These are something that's good for your vocabulary. All right. We already talked about a special list, of words that are always considered feminine. Again, I would not worry too much about this. You are not going to be writing an essay, and you don't have to know this. It's just good information. To know that these are some commonly feminine words. And if they don't belong in this special list, most of the words are masculine. So again, we already from our discussion, I think you will already recognize shams, remember words related to fire, those are feminine. So you will already remember, okay, shams is feminine. Nar, we already said fire, hot, okay, that's feminine. And then we said a lot of the nature words like ard are feminine, right? And then we already talked about nafs is feminine. Okay, all right. So now we are going to move on to another topic. And I'm going to stop sharing this. All right. I am not going to be spending a lot of time on this topic. I just want to cover an introduction. The reason is because this topic will be covered in much detail in the future. But I just want to introduce this topic to you. The reason is because we talked about feminine names today, and this is kind of related to that. It is something called diptotes. So we talked about regular cases. We said marfu'un, mansubun, majrurun. We said marfu'un means like, for example, Muhammadun, kitabun, it ends with a dhamma. These are marfu'un. We said Muhammadan, kitaban, these are mansubun, just to refresh our memory. And majrurun, we said if it's pulled down with a kasra, we say majrurun, for example, Muhammadin, kitabin. So we also talked about how when you put an al, you don't have a tanween, right? We said al-kitabu, kitabun, but if you put a definite article, it is al-kitabu. We also said if it's mudaf, for example, if I say Kitabu Bilalin, book of Bilal, we are not going to put tanween. We talked about this before. If it's mudaf, if it's a mudaf, you are not going to put tanween here. And we have not covered this. We will cover this in the future. This is like, if you say ya ustazun, you're not going to put tanween. But again, this is not something we have covered right now. We will cover this later, okay? So if I say ustazun, if I say ya ustad, oh ustad, I'm not going to put tanween. This we will discuss in another lesson. So, but basically the reason for covering this in this lesson is because sometimes there are certain words. We talked about diptote, which is, for example, you go Muhammadun, Muhammadin, we talked about this, but diptote means it's going to function, the cases function a little bit differently. So in this case, Ismul Mudiri Ibrahimu. See here, Ismul Mudarrisi. The teacher's name is Muhammadun. You say dun, right? Dun, tanween. But here you say Ibrahimu. You're not saying Ibrahimun. You're not saying Ibrahimun. The reason why? Because this is a name in Arabic, and this is like a foreign name. This exception will apply to foreign names. It will apply to female names. So this is why we're learning it here. So it's just, again, nothing to be too worried about. So that if you're wondering while reading the Quran, why is it not Ibrahimun? Well, now you know, because there are certain words that fall in this category of diptote, where it's not going to show a tanween. Even though it's marfu, it's still marfu. Still marfu'un, but it's not going to have a tanween. You're just going to say Ibrahimu versus here you said Muhammadun. Another difference is, so if you say here ila Muhammadin, it's majroor with a tanween, right? But here this is different. So you're not going to say ila Ibrahimin. You're going to say ila Ibrahima. Okay, so majroor case is represented with a fatha. If you do not understand this right now, do not worry. This is a future lesson, but I just wanted to bring this up to your attention right now, just so that if you're wondering why the names appear like that, you are going to be familiar with that. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit more about this before we end. So these words again are called diptote, because they function a little bit differently than the other words we've been looking. So if we look at kitabun, we said kitabun, kitaban, kitabin, right? But these words, which are diptote, they work a little bit differently. Diptote, how is it different? So if it's marfu, you say masajidu, you don't say masajidun. You don't pronounce the tanween. This is how they're different, number one. And number two, and again, tanween, yes. And then see here, kitaban, you say, and then if it's mansub, it will be masajida. You don't put the tanween. It's just masajida. You don't put the tanween. And then the third case, here it is kitabin, but here it will not, it refuses to take a kasra, okay? Diptotes refuse to take a kasra. Even though they are majroor, you will represent them with a fatha. Maybe think of it like they are stubborn. Diptote, they are kind of stubborn. And just to make it fun for you to remember, diptote are stubborn. They are not going to take a kasra at the end. They are going to remain with the fatha at the end, okay? Kitabin is not stubborn. It bended, right? Kitabin bended. But masajida is stubborn. It's a diptote. So it's going to remain with a fatha, even though it should have had a kasra in this case. The majroor case, it remained with a fatha. So you can think of female names as also stubborn. Okay, just for the heck of remembering what is a diptote. So, and these foreign names in the Quran, you will see they're also diptotes. Why are they diptote? Because they function a little bit differently. Fir'aun is also a foreign name, so it functions the same way. So you're gonna, the marfu case will be Fir'aunu, Ibrahimu, Maryamu. Female names are also diptote. You're not gonna say Maryamun, Maryamunna. It doesn't sound right, right? Maryam, you're not going to say Maryamun, you're going to say Maryamu. If you said Muhammadun, that is correct, right? How would you do the mansub case? You don't do the tanween. This is, if in a normal case, it would be Muhammadan. Here it would be no tanween. It will have a fatha. Fir'auna, Ibrahima, Maryama, right? That's the mansub case. And here we see they're stubborn. Majroor, they are refusing these categories, refuse the kasra, right? They refuse the kasra. So Ibrahima and Maryama, even though they are majroor. Okay, feminine names fall in this category. So more example here. For example, so here you see, compare with either Muhammadun, or you can compare with Bilalun. You say min Bilalin, but here you will say min Ahmada, min Ibrahima. Notice no kasra, right? So again, if it's a mudaf ilayhi, possession, kitabu Bilalin, it should have been kasra here, right? Okay, oops, 1 second, it skipped my slides again. Okay, it should have been kitabu Ahmadin, but it refuses the kasra. So kitabu Ahmada. So it's stubborn, right? Because it's a foreign name also, Ahmada. Kitabu Ibrahima. We talked about this. It should have been Ibrahimin, but it doesn't do that. It's Ibrahima. Okay, so again, this is, if you did not understand this lesson, please do not worry. This is a future topic. I just wanted to introduce you. The reason to introduce you is so that when you see these names in the Quran, and you may be, in case you're wondering why it doesn't have, like we talked about Hamidun or Muhammadun, why it's not showing tanween, now you know. So ala Ibrahima, now you know why it behaves a little bit differently. Okay, these words like ala Ibrahim, it is not Ibrahimin, it's Ibrahima, Fir'aunu. These are foreign names, or certain words fall into this category. For example, Jahannam is another one. These are called diptotes, and we will study about them in the future. That's it. This ends the class. We covered a lot of materials. Again, do not be afraid if you didn't understand everything. There will be future lessons on these topics. Okay, so that's the end. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.